Oh yeah, so chapter 5. So here it is at last, that collision with reality. I muttered, rushing headlong down the stairs. This, of course, is no longer the Pope leaving Rome and traveling to Brazil. It's obviously not a ball on Lake Como. You're a scoundrel, ran through my mind, if you can laugh at this now. Oh, what the hell, I shouted, answering myself. It's all over anyway. There was no sign of them, but that didn't matter. I knew they were where they'd gone. By the steps stood by the steps stood by the steps by the steps stood a solitary. It's either yellow, huh? All that coffee. It's okay. I'm gonna get them white in one day. Okay. Oh, what the hell? I shouted, answering myself. It's all over anyway. There was no sign of them, but that didn't matter. I knew they were gone. By the steps stood a solitary night cabbie, his coarse peasant greatcoat completely powdered with snow that was still falling in wet, seemingly warm flakes. It was steamy and close outside. His shaggy little skewbald horse was also powdered with snow and was coughing. That I remember very clearly. I rushed to the sledge, but no sooner had I raised one foot to step in when the recollection of the way Simonov had given me those 6 rubles was the last straw, and I slumped into it like a sack. No, I have to do a lot to redeem all this, I shouted, but I shall redeem it, or I'll perish on the spot this very night. Drive on. We moved off. A whole whirlwind was raging in my head. Going down on their knees to beg for my friendship, that they won't do. That's a mirage, a vulgar mirage, disgusting, romantic, fantastic, just like the ball in Lake Como. That's why I must slap Zverkov's face. I'm obliged to do that, so that's settled. Now I'm tearing off to give him a slap. Faster, the driver jerked the reins. I'll do it the moment I go in, but shouldn't I perhaps say a few words before the slap? By way of introduction, no. I'll just walk in and give him one. They'll all be sitting in the lounge and he'll be on the sofa with Olympia. Damn that Olympia. Once she laughed at my face and refused me. I'll drag Olympia to one side by the hair and pull Zverkov along by the ears, no better by one ear. I'll haul him right round the room by one ear. Very likely they'll all start beating me and throw me out. In fact, that's almost a certainty. Let them. I'll have delivered the first slap. That's my prerogative, and according to the code of honor, that's everything. He'll be branded for life, and no amount of blows will ever wipe out that slap. Only a duel. He'll have to fight. Well, let them thrash me now. Let them, the base swine. Truly, Lyubov will lay into me particularly hard. He's so strong. For Fitchkin will pounce on me from the side and almost certainly grab me by the hair. So let them. That's my whole reason for going. They'll finally have to get into their mutton heads that there's a whole tragedy here. When they drag me to the door, I'll call out loud that they aren't worth my little finger. Faster, driver, faster, I shouted at the cabbie. He gave a sudden start and flourished his whip. My shout was a really wild one. We'll fight at dawn, that's settled. I'm finished with the department. A moment ago, Fitchkin said apartment instead of department. But where shall I get pistols? Nonsense. I'll take an advance on my salary and buy them. What about powder and bullets? That's a second's affair. And how can I arrange all this before dawn, and where am I to find a second? I don't have any friends. Nonsense, I shouted, growing increasingly ruffled. Nonsense. The first person I ask in the street is obliged to be my second. It's just the same as pulling a drowning man out of the water. The most exceptional circumstances must be allowed for. And even if I were to ask the head of my department himself tomorrow to be my second, he too would have to agree simply out of chivalry and to keep the secret. Anton Antonik. The fact was, at that very moment, I could see more clearly and vividly than anyone in the whole wide world the vile absurdity of my assumptions in the reverse side of the coin. But faster, driver, faster, you rogue. But sir, groaned the son of the soil. Suddenly I went cold all over. Wouldn't it be better to go straight home? God, why did I have to invite myself to that dinner yesterday? No, it's impossible. And all that promenading for 3 hours from table to stove. No, they alone, no one else should pay for all those promenades. They must wipe out the dishonor. Faster. What if they should hand me over to the police? They wouldn't dare. They'd be afraid of scandal. And what if Zverkov turns down the duel out of contempt? That's even highly likely, but then I'll show them. I'll dash to the posting station where he's leaving, grab his leg and rip off his overcoat and as he's getting into the coach. Then I'll sink my teeth into his arm. I'll bite him. Just look, everyone, see to what lengths a desperate man can be driven. Then he'll punch me on the head and just the others from behind. I'll shout to all the people there, just look at this young puppy who's off to captivate Circassian girls with my spit on his face. Of course, after that, everything is finished. The department vanishes from the face of the earth. I'm arrested, tried, given the sack, and sent to Siberian penal settlement. But never mind. When I'm released 15 years later, a beggar, all in rags, I'll drag myself after him. I'll seek him out into some provincial town. He'll be married and happy. He'll have a grown-up daughter. I'll tell him, look, you monster, just look at my hollow cheeks. Look at my rags. I've lost everything, my career, my happiness, art, science, the woman I loved, and all because of you. Here are the pistols. I've come to discharge mine, and I forgive you. Then I'll fire into the air, and that's the last he'll hear from me. I was even on the verge of tears, although at that very moment I knew perfectly well that all this came out of Silvio, a Lermontov masquerade, and suddenly I felt terribly ashamed, so ashamed that I stopped the horse, got out of the sledge, and stood in the snow in the middle of the street. The cabbie looked at me in amazement and took a deep breath. What could it do? I couldn't possibly go there. The whole thing had turned into a farce, and I couldn't leave things as they were since then there would be, good God, how could I possibly leave things as they were? And after such insults, no, I called out, flinging myself back into the sledge. It's predestined, it's fate, drive on there, let's go. And in my impatience, I thumped the driver on the neck with my fist. What's that for? What are you hitting me for? Cried my old poor peasant, but he whipped on his miserable nag, which made it kick out with his hind legs. The wet snow was falling into large flakes. I unbuttoned my coat. I was concerned about the snow. I had forgotten everything else since I finally decided on the slap, and I realized with horror that it was all bound to happen right now and that no power on earth could prevent it. The solitary street lamps were glimmering mournfully through the snowy haze like torches at a funeral. The snow was packed under my overcoat, under my frock coat, under my tie, and mounting there. I didn't bother to cover myself again after all. It was a lost cause. Finally we arrived. I leaped out, scarcely aware of what I was doing, raced up the steps and started hammering on the door with fists and feet. My legs were becoming terribly weak. Especially at the knees. The doors seemed to open quickly, as if they knew I was coming. In actual fact, Simonov had forewarned them that another person might be coming, as if it was a place where you had to give prior notice and generally take precautions. It was one of those fashion shops of the time, long since closed down by the police. During the day it was in fact a shop, but in the evenings those with suitable recommendations could go there as guests. With hurried steps I walked across the dark shop and went into the familiar salon where a single candle was burning. I stopped in bewilderment. No one was there. Where are they? I asked someone, but of course they'd already managed to disperse. Standing before me was a person with a stupid smile, the madame herself, who knew me slightly. A moment later, the door opened and another character appeared. Without paying attention to anything, I paced up and down the room, seemingly talking to myself. It was as if I had been saved from death, and I was rejoicing in the fact with my whole being. Indeed, I would most certainly have delivered that slap. Most certainly would I have delivered it, but now they weren't there, and everything had vanished, everything had changed. I looked around, still I couldn't make head or tail of it. Mechanically, I glanced at the girl who had come in. Before me, I saw a fresh, young, rather pale face with straight, dark eyebrows and a serious, as if it were faintly surprised expression. This I liked immediately. I would have hated her had she been smiling. I began to stare at her more intently and with some effort, so to speak. I still hadn't collected my thoughts. There was something kind and simple-hearted in that face, but also something somehow strangely serious. I'm certain that this was to her disadvantage in that place, and that not one of those idiots had noticed her. Besides, she could not have been called a beauty. Although she was tall, strong, and well-built, she was dressed extremely simply. Suddenly something nasty cut to me the quick. I went straight over to her. By chance, I caught sight of myself in the mirror. My agitated face struck me as utterly repulsive, pale, vicious, mean, my hair disheveled. That's fine, I'm glad of it, I reflected. Yes, I'm really glad that I'll strike her as repulsive. That pleases me. That was the end of chapter 5.